go about teaching focus, I'll tell you that it has 4 steps. And I can also tell you from experience that if you try to muddle those steps together and do them all at the same time, you're gonna have problems. So it's important to be able to break it down and understand that you can work on each individual piece of your focus and figure out where you might have a little bit of a focus breakdown through the 4 main parts. The problem is, I think a lot of us, if you walk up to anybody, everybody thinks they know what focus means. We make a lot of assumptions about things. If you walk up to anybody and ask them if they know what focus means, they're going to tell you yes. If you ask them what did it mean, what does it mean, they're going to tell you something along the lines of paying attention. If you ask them how do you pay attention, they'll give you a little bit of a funny look and they'll think for just a second, because it's probably the first time anyone's ever asked them that question, which means it might be the first time they've ever asked themselves that question. How do you pay attention? And then they go to the most obvious answer, listening. But listening is only one piece and one tiny aspect of paying attention, and listening simply is not enough. We can think we're listening, and we can be listening with our ears, but not on the right subject with our brain, or not doing the right things with our bodies, or not watching with our eyes, and these things then the rest of the focus can all fall apart. This is where miscommunication happens. One of many places that miscommunication happens between people and between teammates. So one of the ways that I think people can learn, I can learn to be better teammates with those people around me, is to learn how to absolutely focus on what I'm paying attention to and let people know if I recognize that I'm not paying attention to them. I try to be very mindful about this, especially around the house or at the studio when I'm working, about just letting people know as soon as I register that they're speaking to me, hey, I'm sorry, I was not paying attention. Will you give me 30 seconds to finish this up? And then I will turn to them. Okay, now what was it you were saying? What were we going to talk about? So that I can be fully invested in the zone in that moment, fully focused on what this person is saying, and prepared to be the best teammate I can to them, which means the 4 steps have to happen in order. 1, watch with your eyes. Find what it is that you're wanting to focus on with your eyes. 2, listen with your ears. So then you listen to what it is that you're looking at. If you find that you have a difficult time focusing on what you're listening to, try closing your eyes. Sometimes depriving yourself of a different sense can help you increase your awareness of a particular sense, like hearing. 3rd step, think with the mind. Make sure that after their first sentence, the topic of the discussion is clear. Ask any questions if you're not sure about the topic of the discussion or what it is that's being brought up. Use your mind to put yourself in the position of the topic so that you make sure that you're in the right mindset to be thinking about what you need to think about to be the best teammate you can be to this person, whether you're talking to your children, you're talking to a coworker, you're talking to an employee, you're talking to your boss. Same kind of thing, right? It fits in no matter where you need your best teammate skills to come in. Think with the mind. It's the 3rd part of focus. And 4, of course, do the right thing with your body. Don't forget. If you have a tendency to forget and not take action, then get a calendar, start writing things down, learn how to use a revolving to-do list at first. That's what I used to use before I used calendars. I just wrote down everything that came to mind on a line, and every day as I had time to do stuff, I would go back up the list and see what I could get done in that time. And that's what I call a rotating or revolving to-do list, right? The trick to that though is you have to go back a long ways. Sometimes things get skipped. So if it got more than a page or 2 behind, I would just mark it out and add it back to the bottom if I hadn't gotten to it. So those are the 4 steps to focus. One more time again, whether you're teaching kids or you're trying to work on it yourself, make sure that you stop as soon as you realize you need to focus on something and look for it with your eyes. 2nd thing, make sure that you listen for it with your ears. And if you're having trouble, you can close your eyes and just envision what it was that you're focusing on while you listen to it. 3, think with the mind. And that's what closing your eyes can also help with if you're envisioning what you were thinking about, because it'll help you get on the right subject and topic to be the best teammate you can be to other people. You guys feel me on that, right? I haven't seen any likes or hearts or nothing pop up on this video. So throw in some comments, throw in something. Let me know that you feel me on what I'm saying here, right? So then, of course, taking action on what you focused on. And that's how you show compassion, care, respect, courtesy, is by making sure that after you've processed what topic it's on, you've heard what they had to say, you've thought about it, that you do something with your body to show them that you've paid attention and that you care about what it is that they've said. It's just a big part of being a good teammate. And let's be honest, a lot of us don't do it with our own children, do we? Do we? Let's see, there's some hearts. Let's see some hearts again for that. A lot of us don't do it for our own children sometimes. we don't focus on them because we think that whatever is in front of us is far more important than what they have to say. And maybe, you know what, maybe sometimes it is, but that doesn't mean it's not so important that we can't stop for just a second, acknowledge them, and let them know that we didn't pay any attention to what they said. I'm sorry, I did not hear you. Can you give me 1 more minute or 5 more minutes to get to a point I can stop, and then I'll stop and talk to you for a minute. And then make yourself set a timer. We have these timers we carry with us everywhere called phones. They're like little computers for your pocket. I don't know if you've seen one recently, but there is a timer on it. It's a very simple sort of thing that used to be mechanical back in the day. They weren't even electric, right? Now we have them right on a computer in our phone. But these little timers will make sure that you stay on point and keep yourself to your own mindfulness about your focus, to make sure that you're not ignoring those people around you who are your biggest support and your best teammates. So make sure that you are controlling your focus, because if you're not breaking down in these steps and paying attention to what you're focused on and controlling, trust me, someone else will. It's where impulse buying comes from. It's what advertising world is built on. It's what our entire economy is built on, is basically impulse buying and the ability to control another person's focus and emotions for a long enough period of time to get them to purchase something. It's crazy, right? But most of us fall into a trap of buying things we didn't really want and then regretting it. We get that buyer's remorse. You guys ever get buyer's remorse? Do you regret buying something a month later because it wasn't quite what you thought it would be, or it's not as good as you thought, or whatever, and you could have used that money for something that maybe would have fit you a little bit better? You know, a lot of that comes from basically you allowed your own focus to get controlled by somebody like me sitting behind a computer that you've never even met, that seems to be able to read your mind. It's basic psychology, guys. All of us are unique and different, but we have a lot of similarities, mostly because we all gravitate towards trying to be alike, while at the same time we're all anxious because we're different and yearning to be different. And I don't understand why we put ourselves in such a bipolar sort of, that's the wrong word to use, but opposite sort of at odds with each other. It's like being at a war inside yourself, you know, and you didn't bring any shells to fight it, right? So focus is the first key to being able to take back control of your life. I tell that to adults, and I tell it in a much more watered down fashion to children. So pay attention to your own focus. And are you focused on things that are important to you? And I don't just mean paying attention. And that doesn't just mean listening. That means watching, listening, thinking, and acting on what it is that you were focusing on, all in order. And like I say, if you try to do those things at the same time and assume, you make an assumption, which, do you know what assumption means? I ask people that question a lot. What does assuming mean? And a lot of times I get some various answers that are kind of close, right? Kind of close to what assuming means or what an assumption is. But all an assumption really is a belief in something without any proof. An assumption is a belief in something without any proof. So if you assume your focus is good, ask yourself, what is your proof? If you don't have a lot of good proof and you really start digging down and go, you know, I can't think of any examples, then don't use that as an excuse. Realize that maybe you're who I'm talking to right now, and maybe you need to do the same thing I need to do today and sit down and go back over these basics of focus and making sure that when we need to focus on something, we watch it, we listen to it, we think about the topic that is important to it, and then we respond with our body in a way that shows that we paid attention. Now, that's only one type of focus. That's kind of a way to get into a hyper focus, and that's what a lot of people call presence, right? When you talk to somebody and they appear to be very present in the moment, it means that no matter what's going on around them, it feels like they're only talking to you and that they don't even notice anyone else in the room. And that's what they call presence, or being present for somebody. And I think that's a big part of being a great teammate, is learning how to be present for people, using those 4 steps of focus to make sure that we break down those 4 steps of focus, practice them even as adults, to make sure we're being good examples and not letting other people control our focus, leading us into impulse buys and all kinds of things that we don't need or want, right? So I got kind of off on that, but 4 steps of focus, really, really important. Now, the other side of the coin of focus is something that we talk about in active protection. I see Mr. Quadra's on here. Mr. Quadra will understand, you know, the 2 concepts. So you have sort of that hyper focus, it's all about being present in the moment. And then you also have the awareness level, right? Which awareness focus, in my opinion, there are people who have talents and everything, but in my opinion, awareness is something that requires an amount of training for it. It's basically the ability to notice just enough about everything around you, similarly, not exactly at the same time, but as you glance around without fully registering it, but to be able to notice enough to recall it later if necessary. Essentially, the ability to take an image picture, a detailed picture in your mind of the environment that you're in, right? And there's lots of ways that you can practice your awareness too. So another way you can practice awareness, if that's something you struggle with, is through hyperfocus, using the 4 steps of focus. So make sure that every time you walk into a room and you're trying to be aware of what's in the room, take 5 seconds to look around. Remember to watch with your eyes and look at anything that draws your eyes. Listen with your ears to any sounds that you may hear. Think with your brain of anything logically that those things might be, and respond with your body accordingly. As you practice doing that going into a room, then you'll find that your natural awareness gets better as you improve your ability to focus, like hyper-focus in on something and be present at the same time. You can practice both.